Hello from the hilltop. Welcome to the 19th annual GEMA Alumni Career Panel sponsored by the Georgetown Entertainment and Media Alliance in partnership with Alumni Career Services and the Coie Career Center. I'm Justin Spence, Associate Director of Regional Alliances, and I'll be introducing today's event. I'm so glad to see so many of you online joining us today for today's panel. Today's session will be moderated by Mitch Pizer, Vice President and Executive Producer at Time Life. Mitch received his MBA from Georgetown in 1993 and is the current co-director of GEMA DC. Before I turn things over to Mitch and our panelists for today's conversation, I'd like to share a few quick webinar tips and reminders. First, the webinar is being recorded and the recording will be made available to all registrants on the GEMA YouTube channel. Thank you all for submitting your so many questions for our panelists during registration. Many of your questions that you've asked will be answered during this session. If you have additional questions or comments during the session, please submit those to me via the questions area on the GoToWebinar control panel. We will have a live Q&A session towards the end of today's broadcast, but please feel free to submit your questions at any time. Finally, if you're having any technical difficulties, please submit those concerns to me via the question area as well. Without any further ado, I'm thrilled to turn things over to Mitch to welcome our panelists today. Mitch, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Justin, and also thank you to all the panelists. Thank you, Rich Batista, for bringing together such an esteemed group, and thank you to all who are joining today. Welcome to GEMA's 19th annual Alumni Career Panel and our first virtual one. Before we start, I'd just like to encourage any of you who are not already members of GEMA to join at gema-hoyas.org and follow us on social media. We have a lot to cover in a short amount of time, so let's get started. We have an impressive panel tonight from such a diverse and compelling range of the media and entertainment worlds. Gilbert Cruz, culture editor for the New York Times. Christian Davin, global head of movies marketing for Amazon. Alison Eakle, executive vice president, head of creative content for Shondaland. Dominique Shelton, Leipzig, partner and firm-wide co-chair ad tech privacy and data management for Perkins Cole LLP. And Kevin Scharff, R&D game lead and senior producer for Riot Games. Our first question is if you would all briefly describe what you do, share the work of your organization, and if you'd like, talk about some of the other types of work that you've done in the past. And we'll start with Gilbert.
Great, thank you very much, Mitch, and thank you everyone for attending tonight. As Mitch said, I'm the culture editor at the New York Times. And what that means is I am a manager of people who do actual journalism. I run our reporters and our critics who cover most of the arts at the Times. So that's movies, TV, pop music, and then the really fancy fine art stuff, dance, classical music, fine arts, and theater. And so all of those topics have one or two critics. You might have heard of some of them, Tony Scott, Manola Dargis, and Ben Brantley, who just retired. And we have reporters who are trying to cover the institutions and the power players in each of those groups. Before having this job at the Times, I was the TV editor here, where I actually did assign people to do reviews and journalism. And then I also worked at Time Magazine, and New York Magazine, and Entertainment Weekly. My first job out of college was at a small newspaper in Alabama called the Tuscaloosa News. I'm from New York. I'd never been to Alabama. I'd certainly never heard of Tuscaloosa, to be honest. And it was only through my starting to write for the Georgetown Voice that I was able to sort of get a leg up and get that first job. So I've been all over. And by all over, I mean mostly based in New York. So that's what I do and what I've done. I will hand over to Christian.
Hey everyone, Christian Davin, Global Head of Movies Marketing for Amazon Studios. What that means is I oversee the marketing of all of our films, both streaming and theatrical, which includes, but is not limited to, the creation of trailers and movie posters and television spots, to the media campaigns, setting the strategy, working on the social campaigns, and overseeing publicity in partnership with heads of all of those departments, as well as interfacing with our own analytics team, as well as the people who build the Prime Video website and serve titles on that website. I've worked on the studio side my entire career, but I got my start for most of my career actually making trailers, TV spots, creative advertising at places like Warner Brothers, Fox, MGM, and most recently at Netflix. And I'll pass it over to Alison.
Thank you. I am Alison Eakle. I head up creative content for Shondaland, which is a content creation company run by Shonda Rhimes and her partner Betsy Beers. They've been in it together since the early days of their first show, Grey's Anatomy, which Shonda created, and have since made multiple shows for ABC, including Private Practice, Scandal, How to Get Away with Murder, Station 19 most recently. And I came on board the company in 2013. Primarily, the first project I ever worked on from a development standpoint as a development executive, meaning taking it from very beginning idea through shooting of a pilot, through launching of a series and taking it 6 seasons, was How to Get Away with Murder. And now I currently oversee all of our content, whether that's scripted or unscripted, which we're branching out into, fiction, obviously fiction, nonfiction, and then also features and TV for our expansion into our exclusive deal with Netflix, which we've been in for 3 years. So I manage a team of 3 other executives getting all of that done, and work very closely with the company's head of production and head of post-production, an in-house senior creative director who's like a producing director who works with us. And together we are working to not only make shows like Bridgerton, which launches Christmas Day on Netflix, but also our first documentary, which comes out Thanksgiving weekend, which is Dance Dreams Hot Chocolate Nutcracker. We are about to finish production, thanks COVID for the pause on that, Inventing Anna, which is the story of Anna Delvey, Soho grifter, you may have read about in New York Magazine. So a lot of different new exciting projects for us that I think our fans from the ABC days are going to love, but are quite different in many ways from what we were doing there. And then the parts of the company that I work in synergy with but don't oversee include a slate of podcasts, and then a digital arm that does websites, has a website and website development. And with that, I will pass it off to Dominique.
Thank you, Alison. So happy to be here and really thrilled to speak to all of the students and everybody else who are alums that might be interested. So I I'm the global co-chair of our firm's ad tech privacy and data management team. So the firm is about 1,100 attorneys. It's a Fortune 100 as well, and I lead a team of about 15 lawyers that help a lot of companies in the entertainment industry get their message out. So I was really interested in hearing what Gil was talking about, and Christian and Alison, in terms of just connecting with the consumers of the content in digital platforms. And so I help clients do that, think through their data strategy, and also to try to do that in a way that doesn't raise concerns like what we've been seeing. Alison mentioned Netflix with the social dilemma and otherwise, where people feel like they're being tracked rather than just suggested or are actually having personalized content. So really helping clients not end up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, not in the way that Gil's talking about, but for maybe apps that might be tracking users or location data that maybe even the entertainment company wasn't aware was involved. So I work on the back end with a lot of digital marketing teams, and increasingly with C-suite and boards to help explain to them what some of the risks are and how to avoid them. And Kevin.
Hi, thanks, Dominique. My name is Kevin Scharf. I work at Riot Games. I'm a senior producer there, where I work in our R&D group, which is our kind of incubator inside of Riot Games, which is a developer and publisher of kind of international gaming content. We're most well known for a game called League of Legends, which is the most played PC game in the world. And matter of fact, we have our 10th World Championship happening in Shanghai this Saturday. For those of you who want to turn upside down your clocks, I believe it's at 6 a.m. on the East Coast. For those of us on the West Coast, at 3 a.m. But very excited about that. Before I was working in games at Riot, I was the director of operations for our creative and IP group, which was a group designed around how we look at taking all of our intellectual property and looking at how to generate player value outside of the gaming space itself. So a variety of entertainment opportunity spaces that we've looked at. Before I joined Riot, I've been a producer of games, mainly on consoles. So everything from Call of Duty to God of War to Lost Planet, I've worked on. I was once upon a time an animator early in my career. So I really learned the love of crafting creative experiences before I kind of sold my soul for Excel sheets and Google documents. And I guess I'll pass it back to you, Mitch, for the follow-up.
Thank you, Kevin. So that's great. So this panel in and of themselves are keeping us entertained in a pandemic. Thank you. So I'd like to go on to the next question, which is if you could all talk about how you got started and also what kinds of roles do you think might be available for those who are trying to start as well. And we'll start with Kevin this time. Thanks.
Okay, sure. Yeah, gosh. So I go back quite a ways. I graduated from the College of Arts and Sciences in 1994. I was actually a government major and an English minor. And what really helped me get my start was I knew I wanted to be involved in, at the time, I thought I wanted to be involved in kind of film and TV development. But I had a real passion for the creative side of the development, not on the business side. And so I had taken, some classes at Georgetown. Professor Glavin's class, I think, is the one that always stands out to mind for a lot of folks. I also took a colloquium with him where I wrote screenplays. And for me, it was really wanting to get back to kind of my creative core. So I actually went to graduate school as kind of my start. I went to UCLA's film school, and that's where I rediscovered my childhood passion of drawing and art, and that's what led me into animation. What I found was really important along the journey wasn't just about developing my craft or my ability, the core creative ability, but it really has been kind of finding those opportunities where I could have a seat at the table by presenting my ideas. And I found that, while early on, those first jobs are easiest to find by getting a way in which you can kind of help or support or learn from others around you to elevate your artistry or your craft or your knowledge. Just being able to have that seat at the table. So my first job was actually in a small visual effects house out in Burbank. I believe the first shows I worked on were visual effects for Power Rangers and Sabrina the Teenage Witch, which were very popular in the 90s. And was a great place for me to get my start of just learning how to do that first visual effects shot, and getting good at doing those things led to more opportunities to kind of start to engage with others and get involved in more kind of collaborative opportunities. So I always look for those first kind of how to get your foot in the door, whether it's through a particular craft that you're interested in or a knowledge space that you feel that you have something to contribute, is really was for me a vital first step, and something I always, when I go to talk to people getting their start, is look for that opportunity, that internship, or the ability to kind of find that first start, maybe in a smaller company or in a big company that offers a lot of internship opportunities. And I'll pass that over to Dominique.
Yeah, so I first got my start, I'm a lawyer, so the way I got my start really was going to Georgetown Law Center, and I started at a time, took my first privacy and American law course really before the internet was a thing in 1990 with Professor Anita Allen, who's now the vice provost at UPenn, but she was on loan from Harvard at the time. And I remember just really being struck by that course, and I loved the fact that we were dealing with big concepts. I wrote my first paper on the sort of public outing of a politician, Barney Frank, and it was about, you know, is there any privacy for public figures? And of course, now it's, you know, a totally different situation that we're in today. So, you know, fast forward, I went to Georgetown because I was interested in international relations. I got my undergraduate degree at Brown University in international relations and French civilization. So that was, you know, my original attraction to Georgetown. And then I realized that international law meant if I wanted to litigate, which I did want to do, that meant like litigating in The Hague or something on major like war crimes laws and so forth. And that was fascinating, but not what I wanted to do. So I sort of figured that I couldn't litigate and also be, you know, and sort of satisfy the international component. So I just went to a big firm and I went to go litigate, and that's what I did. I represented commercial, you know, commercial companies, a lot of entertainment companies, but across industry on unfair competition, business interruption sort of things. And then around 1998, I went to a firm that did sort of the original work for Yahoo. And Yahoo had just acquired GeoCities, and there were a spate of privacy-related investigations as well as class actions. So everybody in that little boutique wound up being a privacy litigator and learning about digital and learning about ad tech through that experience. And that took us through to, you know, 2003, really giving guidance for clients on how they should represent themselves on the web. And from there, I was just really, you know, struck. You know, all of the things that I wanted, the international component, the intellectual challenge about dealing with tech, and then the ability to really help clients work through these issues. And at that time, defending them in litigation was, you know, what I love to do. I did that for ultimately 22 years litigating. And about 7 years ago, so the past 7 years, I spent 22 years litigating, about 7 years now, purely counseling and sort of, I call it litigation avoidance advice, so that I can help clients stay out of trouble, you know, leverage their data in a way that's not going to have disastrous, you know, data breaches or bad press about what they're doing, and really trying to, you know, basically walk that line to the digital transformation that we are actually in. And now with COVID-19, it just totally supersized that, so that the marketing has to be digital, and, you know, really everything has to be digital right now. So it's right in my sweet spot, and really enjoying this time of career. Let's see, should I go to Alison?
Did I unmute myself? I got rid of my video last time. It's a real crapshoot. I'm sorry. It's funny. I have a very similar trajectory in some ways to Kevin. I was at Georgetown 98 to 2002. I had two professors whose courses really shaped my transition from coming in thinking I was like a good Tracy Flick, going to run for local office and be in politics, to deciding I was going to pursue a career in entertainment. John Glavin, I took every class he offered. Stephen Wertzler, who also, Glavin focused on playwriting, screenwriting. Stephen Wertzler was more focused on like true cinema studies, in a way that just ignited my passion for all of that. Simultaneously, we started the closed circuit TV channel on campus, Georgetown Television, with perhaps loftier goals than GETV could contain. We tried to make a sitcom. We hosted a film festival. We tried to do a live call-in show about Dawson's Creek, that old hot TV hit, and really got the bug at that point. And I realized that I felt a little frozen, quite frankly. 9/11 was my senior year. I feel like a lot of the writing I did in Glavin's class was a huge part of what got me through it. I also looked at my peers at the time who were, you know, in the years around me, like Mike Birbiglia, John Mulaney, Zal But Moglich, Mike Cahill, Britt Marling took over my daily news show when I went abroad. Like, it was such a group of people who really felt like, oh, these are people who truly believe and are talented enough that they're going to make it in an industry that, you know, Georgetown kids are not necessarily. The first thing out of the gate in the late 90s was not, you've come here to be in entertainment. And so I went to the University of Texas at Austin for my MFA in screenwriting, did a really brief stint back in New York, and then moved with my best friend who also wanted to be a writer, and her boyfriend out to LA in 2007. And the first job I got was in motion picture marketing, Christian, at Paramount. And I literally, it was through a temp agency, which I don't even know if they staff entertainment jobs anymore, but in 2007 they did. I took a typing test, nailed it. And then I got a job like just assisting as a temp for the EVP of marketing. And I got to literally meet like Steven Spielberg and Kathy Kennedy, all from behind a desk with a headset on that I still wore when I ran to the bathroom. And it was super intense. But it made me realize something really important as a writer. I was realizing, oh, you better not write anything that you don't know how you're going to sell, or you don't know who the audience is for. Like, that was the kind of the crucial thing marketing taught me, even though I knew I wasn't destined to be a marketing exec necessarily. And the more hours I spent on Paramount Lot doing that job, the less I wrote. And the more I realized I really loved working with writers and workshopping way more than I loved like the lonely art of writing. And so I just started talking to everybody I could who would ever take a drinks with me, which is a big thing in LA. You invite other assistants to drinks and pick their brain, and then you kind of make a little class that you come up with together in the industry. And I realized there was a job called being a development executive that seemed to really suit me. It's for people who love to read and give feedback, whether it's welcome or not. And I decided that was the path I really wanted to take. I was lucky enough to get somebody to take a chance on me at Paramount Vantage, same lot, very convenient. That all went away in 2009 when all the indie studios kind of crumbled. But luckily, a friend of a friend got me a job assisting an executive at Sony. And I got to work on The Social Network and some other kind of incredible films while I was there, and really learned what it is not to just have a development pipeline, but things you were actually making. And then from there, I realized, okay, how do I make the jump from assistant to creative executive, which is the hardest thing to do and is incredibly competitive. And a friend of mine who I'd known as an assistant at Paramount Vantage, his old boss from Comedy Central was starting Ellen DeGeneres' company, and was like, it's not a full exec job, but you'll have to answer some phones as well, but you will kind of be in the thick of it creatively, and it'll just be the two of you and Ellen. And it was. And we had our offices in the Ellen Show offices. And I was scared on national television quite a few times, and had a lot of fun and learned a ton about TV, and was so happy I'd made that transition into television at a place where I could learn everything from how you make a game show to how you make a scripted ABC comedy. And from there, when my boss left, I started looking to other places. And yet again, my old boss from Paramount Vantage brought me into Shondaland when she was still there, because they were trying to do more comedy and I wanted to stretch my wings and do more drama. And it just worked out great. She left like 8 months after I was there. I was alone for a long time, just me, Sean, and Betsy building the company, and eventually kind of got to assemble a team. But I do think all the time that, like, if I had not been willing to just like take the temp job in marketing to see what it was like and learn, I would not have started to forge all those relationships that got me to where I ultimately wanted to be. And that was probably like one of the best pieces of advice I got, was just keep meeting people and also keep asking yourself, what's the next thing I want to learn, as a way to like understand where you should go next, as opposed to, well, what's the way that's going to get me where I want to go fastest? Kind of approaching it more holistically and taking a chance on something that doesn't seem obvious can really take you into an interesting direction. And with that, I will send it to my fellow marketing pro, since that was clearly me, Christian.
I can't believe I have to follow that. That's tough. Number one rule of marketing: careful who you follow. I think for you guys, this will be a real two roads diverged in the wood moment, because I also took a temp job, except I kept mine, and so I fell in love with marketing. I was scheduled to have a job at CNN when I graduated, And then right before I was about to take that job, the person I was about to work for got fired themselves. And so I had to pound the pavement. And I had a choice in New York of working in the dub room at ABC in the basement of this giant building, or answering the phones at Miramax Films in New York. And so I took the answering the phones job. That led to a temp job in the marketing department in this wonderful thing called creative advertising. And I knew nothing about editing or graphic design, but I knew from Georgetown and the experience of trying to be a journalist how to tell a good story and how to condense a larger narrative into a short, punchy 2.5 column, article, or in this case, a 2 minute 30-second trailer. And then from there, I worked my way out to LA and through the studio system as it grew into things like promotions and digital and social, and eventually over to streaming at Netflix, and then now at Amazon. If you're looking into all the different disciplines in marketing, because there's a ton. There's a great book. It's very dated now. It's called Selling the Sizzle by Barry Average. It will not include anything new like streaming or social, but it will give you a good sense of what it means to be a publicist, what it means to be a creative advertising executive, what it means to be a media executive, and all of those various disciplines that funnel up into marketing, from research all the way into social, digital, etc. With that, I'll give it over to Gilbert.
Hi. I also went to Georgetown to study government and English. I don't know if it's because when I started, Bill Clinton was president, and he had gone to Georgetown. I think the West Wing had just started, maybe on NBC, and politics was on my brain. I said, well, Georgetown's in DC. I'm going to go down there and we get into politics. Then I went down and two things happened, which was one, this might be just unique to my class, all the people that were going into politics sucked. And then two is that I couldn't afford any unpaid internships. And so I couldn't take any of those like jobs on the Hill. And so I think it was junior year, a friend of mine that I'd met in a film class, I think it was Professor Cook, Bernie Cook was my guy. I took a lot of his classes. Someone I met in one of those classes asked me to write some movie reviews for the Georgetown Voice, which I started to do. They were terrible, but I loved doing it. And then I decided to make a career shift at the last minute to journalism. I didn't have any experience. I didn't have any internships. I applied to over 100 newspapers across the country, and I got rejected from all of them, except for one, this newspaper in Alabama, who said, we'll give you a job for 3 months. You got to come down here. You have to have a car. You have to have a driver's license. I didn't have any of that, but I lied. I said I knew how to drive. Having grown up in New York, I didn't know how to drive. I didn't have a car, but I needed the job. So I made my way down there with very little driving experience, and earned a full-time job doing the thing that, if we're talking about journalism, you sort of need to do at some point early in your career, and it's harder to do these days because so many places have shut down over the past decade, which is learn how to report, learn how to go out into a community and talk to people and get information and try to make sense of the world. I did that for a year. It really was my journalism school. I didn't go to journalism school. I learned on the job and by making lots of mistakes. And then an opportunity at Entertainment Weekly back in New York opened up as an assistant, which was a very low paying job, mostly opening books. Those are the book department. If you don't know how many books are published every week in America, it's like hundreds of books. It's absolutely insane. And so my job for a long time was opening books, packages, putting them on shelves for the book editor, and then sometimes reading like a 600-page book and writing 100-word reviews of them. It's very weird to look back on a career and think of the path that is taken, because a lot of times it feels not planned at all and more like luck than anything else. The one thing through all the jobs I've had, whether it was at Tuscaloosa News or Entertainment Weekly or Time or now at the New York Times, that is important, I think, for anyone who wants to go to journalism, is figure out a way to write as often as possible, as early as possible. Because now that I'm in a position to hire people, young journalists who maybe are shooting their shot a little too soon and they want to jump like right to the New York Times, you can tell that this person has not written that much. And whether you're working as a reporter, whether you're working on a podcast, whether you're working on a video team, a news video team, writing is part of all those jobs. You got to write a script for a podcast. You have to sort of write various memos no matter what you do. And there's nothing more important. Write a lot and read a lot, which is what I tried to do very early in my career. Now, I don't have to write anything. So I could say it was a waste of time, but I wouldn't have got here without it. The one thing that I find in young journalists who are hoping to work at places like the Times or the Atlantic or Vox or New York Magazine is a lot of them haven't had the opportunity to find their voice yet, right? There are two things that are important, which is facts, getting them right. It's more important than ever before right now. And finding something that distinguishes you in terms of your writing. I don't think I did, which is why I became an editor, but it was an important first step. I guess I'm handing back to the moderator. Hi, Mitch.
Hello, Gilbert. Thank you. Great answer. And actually, it's a really good segue into the next question, which is, what does your organization look for? And even a bit more specifically, and I think you touched on some of those things, but what qualities do you look for specifically when you're looking at people trying to get going and you're at the New York Times or wherever you might have been?
Oh, it's going back to me.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah, we'll start back. Yes,
great.
Thanks.
I mean, so the path, there used to be a path in journalism, and we all work in different parts of media here, so I can only talk about journalism. There used to be a path where you would start at a small place, a small newspaper, and then you go to a mid-sized newspaper, and then you go to a small metropolitan daily newspaper, and then you would go to a place like the Washington Post or the New York Times or the Boston Globe or the Wall Street Journal. And the fact that I'm using the word newspaper a lot tells you how old that career path was, because nobody really talks about newspapers anymore. They talk about news organizations. Even the greatest newspapers in the world are mostly consumed digitally and online. So that career path is just not what it was. It really is more of a try to chart your own path, try to find any place that'll take your writing so you can have something that you can say has been published. Because whether you're commissioning editor, someone looking for op-eds or for stories or for reported pieces or for essays, or whether you're someone, the type of editor who's looking for a full-time employee, you need to see evidence, and you need to see as much evidence as possible. And it's harder for people starting in this business these days to get that evidence out there, because if you're not published, it doesn't really exist. You can say, I wrote this thing on the side, but we don't really take that seriously. So I think what we're looking for is someone who has things, who has writing, and it's indicative of someone who just is not afraid to take as many swings as possible, knowing that some of them are not going to work, knowing that some of the stories you write or some of the reviews that you write or some of the essays that you write are not going to be good. But the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. So, but it's important for us to see sort of a paper trail of someone who's tried to put their stuff out there, even if they were not able early in their career to find a full-time job, because there are fewer of those in the business of journalism, at least print journalism, whether it's the newspaper or digital, than ever before. When it comes to TV journalism, audio journalism, those fields are exploding, and they continue to explode. So you might want to think about those spaces. Chris.
Yeah, I'm drafting off of what Gilbert said. I mean, I think people have the misperception that entertainment and tech are completely different fields, and I think the reality is there's a lot of overlap in the thinking in both areas. I think one thing that's true of people who are super successful both in tech and entertainment is that they share the common trait of just getting shit done, no matter what the cost, and no matter what lane they are in. And by that, I don't mean like, oh, you have to be ruthless, but I think it's about how you approach a problem, and how you can be a creative problem solver when faced with challenging solutions, or when faced with challenges, and coming up with interesting solutions that might be not within your discipline. And I think more and more, as the world changes and as tech becomes infused with entertainment, people who are dynamic thinkers, fast movers, and creative problem solvers are the types of people that we're looking for. If you want to be in the creative field, it helps that you have some shred of creativity. And I think part of what is really important as you guys embark on your careers is actually knowing yourself. And knowing what excites you and what you like doing and what you're good at, because it's cheesy to say, but if you have a job you like, it doesn't feel like work. And trust me, like now it just seems like, oh, I just want to get to that job space, but you're gonna be doing this for a long time, so you might as well enjoy what you're doing. And finding what you enjoy doing may mean you fail a couple of times. And I think, again, I echo Gilbert, like it's okay to fail. It's okay to try on different things, but be honest with yourself. Don't try and jam a square peg into a round hole. If it's not working out, or if you don't have it, or if you look across the desk next to you and that person is better than you, like maybe it's time to move on, and find something that you do feel passionately about, because if you're passionate about your job, you will be successful. With that, I'll pass it to Alison.
Thank you. Yeah, I second all of that. And actually, Christian, you just made me think of another big thing I look for, which is, so when I go to hire an assistant or a junior exec on a team, I am highly aware of someone who's able to keep their eyes on their own paper. And what I mean by that is just somebody who is self-motivating and has a sense of purpose and mission, and is not just driven by like what everyone else is doing. What's the cool in TV so much, and I'm sure in futures as well, there's a lot of emphasis on what's the cool show of the moment. People will kind of express their mandates. I'll get on the phone with an agent and say things like, I'd love an I May Destroy You. Yeah, me and everyone. I would love a Fleabag, great. It's all about having a point of view that is that kind of speaks to your own lived experience, to what you want to see in the world, that shows me you have imagination, that the show that you think might be hot might not exist yet, but you can kind of envision how that might look, or how you might try to express that to a writer who could actually bring it to life. So having that kind of point of view on your own, and not just sort of speaking to what you think is the cool, the hip, the woke stuff that everyone's talking about, but rather really tells me something about who you are as a human. That is a huge factor, I think, when I look at hiring. And I think secondarily to that, the ability to Gilbert's point, to be able to then express that in writing is incredibly important in our field, because so often I won't have the time to jump on a call to hear all about whatever project you're pitching me, or whatever coverage you just did and what you read. You'll have to send me like, how can you express in 4 sentences why I actually should read this script, or how I could articulate a pass to somebody if I'm never going to have time to read it myself. That is incredibly important. And then secondarily, the other thing I would say is, I think it's really important to be well watched, shall we say, right? Well watched, well read in our industry of creation of content. I do think also, again, lived experience is really important. I'm always intrigued to hire people who haven't just been like the traditional assistant pathway, or always been into film and TV, that have lived a little bit of other lives, maybe had another career, maybe studied biology primarily in college. Like my assistant now has an education in opera. I mean, I get excited by people who are truly curious and excited about other worlds and how people live, and have gotten out there a little. So I think that's as important as being able to kind of talk about your most anticipated releases of 2022 in an interview, if that makes sense. Dominique, take it away.
Yeah, so much of what I've heard, it's amazing to me because we're in different disciplines around entertainment, and so much of what is said is the type of thing that I look for. So I'm literally in the midst of a job search right now. So if anybody is in between jobs or has graduated already, hit me. But what I really look for is imagination, dedication, and so much of what we do is really being responsive, right? So we're working with clients that are going, 100 miles an hour, and it's not unusual for us to get a call. Well, this, campaign is going out. This ad campaign is late, and it needs to be approved, and legal is the only thing holding it up. And so, you just get it in the morning, and it's a fire drill. But you still need to be able to tell clients how to walk through an area. For example, in the area of digital marketing, walking through privacy or AI risks, things that they may not see around the corner, they come back and, slap them in the face later. So, what seems like a great promotion, just there are ways to do it, and there's a how. It's not like, no, you can't, and here's all the legal risks, but more creative thinking, okay, this is where the client wants to go. What can we do to help facilitate this without them exposing their flank left and right, where in ways that they may not even be able to contemplate. So a lot of what I've been looking at recently are things where there aren't really laws yet, AI, machine learning, facial recognition, social justice, bias, and some of the technologies that are out there. Those are brand risks for companies, and helping my person that I'm working with in the company be able to issue spot and address things, mitigate, and still move forward at sort of lightning speed is what all of us have to do on my team. So I'm really looking for that. Someone said to me today in an interview that she thought she was a people pleaser, and I'm like, I was accused of that when I was early in my career. And I'm still like that. I still really try to take on what the client wants as an ultimate goal, but tell them how to do it in ways that they may not realize. The other thing I'd like to see them is really feel have something in their lives that they can talk about, that they feel like they've brought to a level as far as they can get it. I guess the love of trying to just perfect something. There's a real satisfaction in feeling like you've done everything you can do. You've thought the question all the way around, and you came up with here's my, and I like what Alison said, here's my unique way, not this is what so-and-so said this, so I need to do it, or so-and-so did that, or I read that, but synthesizing the material and then coming back and using that creativity for solution and problem solving. Writing's essential. And also the last thing I'll say is, in addition to the writing, which is, absolutely essential in law, but communication skills in general. My clients don't have time to read a 10-page memo, a law review article about a point, even though as a newer lawyer, you might be tempted to just put everything down that that's different. That's for a book project or for, something else. But when you're trying to give pointed advice to clients, it's a different skill set to be able to almost what Gilbert probably does as an editor. I tell my client associates all the time to think of it like a headline. What is it that you want to say that the client should do? What's the reason? And then say it again, what they should do, and get out of there. And then finally, really, and I worry about this, especially with Gen Z coming up, but being able to, even in Zoom, look people in the eye, have a conversation, articulate what it is that you want to say. That's very important, and it can't be a lost skill to really learn how to express. So I try to look for all those things. And Kevin.
So it's a common misconception that to get into the gaming industry or game development, that you have to be this kind of hardcore gamer or play tons and tons of games. And what I think is quite interesting, because I've been able to navigate both kind of what I call traditional or linear entertainment and interactive entertainment, is and in particular particular why Riot is good at this and what we really look for is the idea of player orientation, of really understanding kind of what players look for and what they're looking to experience. And so the high-tuned attention to customer orientation, to whatever you do and however you create things or make things, or whatever part of the industry you're in, whether you're on marketing, whether you're in finance, whether you're in legal, understanding who our players are has been kind of the secret sauce. That's what allowed Riot to like change the business model and make games free to play, to build an esport, largely because really understanding what it is to play and what our players want has been important. The second note is just a more general aspect about going into something like games. It's a really exciting time just because over the course of my career, I've seen this massive democratization of development. To give an example, my first job, I think my salary was probably, my annual salary was probably about a third of what the computer cost was that I was actually working on. And I was very, very nervous, right? Like, don't break this computer. Now, you know, hardware is cheap. The tools to make games are free. Distribution platforms are free. That literally, with enough entrepreneurial spirit and the right network, you can form your own studio, do it from your own home, and distribute globally across the world. And so a lot of it is understanding, kind of setting those goals that you want, building on connections of people that want to, you know, dare to dream with you. And you can do that at a large company, or you can, you know, spin up your own startup.
Thank you, Kevin. Great answers all around. And the time is going by very quickly. We were able to get, we're going to take some questions, and we actually had received some questions before we started. So I'm going to start with those, a couple of those, and I'm going to toss them out to the entire panel. I think if we get a couple of answers, that would be great, but more can jump in as well. But I'm going to start with one that I'm going to read. How can students best prepare themselves during the current pandemic, and has this changed recruitment in your industry? And I'll toss it out.
I'll take a quick swing, which is I don't think I can answer the first part. I think I can answer the second part a little by nodding to what Dominique said, which is if you're talking to people as we are here through this platform or through Zoom or Google Hangout or whatever else, it is a very it's unnatural. This is just not the way that at least until recently job interviews and informational interviews have gone, and it's you should definitely practice a bunch with family members or friends before you get on any of these, because I can assure you, and I've noticed this myself, which is the things that maybe the tics that maybe you have in person are exacerbated over video chats, and a lot of times you only have one chance to sort of do this, and because we're all humans and we're all flawed and we're not machines, we will pick up on those things, and it as try as we might negatively affect the way in which we see you. That's not great, but it is a reflection of the fact that we are all imperfect. So you should try to practice in whatever platform you have through video calls before getting on some with potential employers.
Thank you, Gilbert. Next question is, this is something that Alison and several of you had touched upon in terms of relationships. Does anybody have any tips for networking?
I think to speak to the pandemic moment, you have a bit of a captive audience. I'm sure I'm putting myself out there now, but I have gotten a number of cold emails in the last 7 months from people through the Georgetown or Texas websites. And depending on how, what part of an existential crisis I'm at any moment, I have found myself answering them. And it's, again, it's not a perfect system, but it's one that I think doesn't get enough credit for actually working. That said, got to write a fun query email, got to have a great snappy opener, maybe know something about me that you found online as a point of entry. But I do think you have a lot of people at home in front of their computers, and who knows, that person you admire might write back. And it's not to say that's immediately going to lead to a job, but you could even say, hey, do you know any assistants in your industry I could talk to you think would do an informational with me? And a lot of times people will, if not their own assistants.
Anybody else want to jump in on networking, and are you open to it, and any other thoughts there?
Yeah, I can jump in. One thing I would say, which is like maybe tangential to networking, which is I think like going to school in DC, unless you're from LA or the West Coast, like LA can be a big, scary place. The entertainment industry can seem really opaque. There are probably hundreds of companies that do something that you want to do that you just don't know that exists. There are over 50 trailer houses in Los Angeles. There are over 100, graphic agencies. There are a ton of small production companies that make really big things that, have tiny logos that you don't take, notice of when you're watching your favorite show. So there's a lot of companies that you can join that are not just the big Fortune 500 companies. One trick to use is like, most of these industries have their own award shows, and most of those award shows are all available online, and most of those online sites have links to those actual companies. So as you're thinking about cold calling outside of the Georgetown network, if there's something that you are super passionate about, look up editorial awards, look up sound design awards, look up guild awards, look up the winners, and expand your horizon, because there are a lot of things that maybe don't fall into the traditional like executive producer, marketing head role, that you might find really enjoyable.
We've heard from a few of the panelists whose careers have taken not always the same path as you would think, getting into the entertainment world, and have a question from a couple of questions came in. One of them was, how would a young professional in banking, consulting, or another non-media field? And I had a few other questions related to that. How do non-media and entertainment folks get into this field? Any advice for those?
Well, I guess I can speak a little bit to that. I mean, being as a lawyer, it's really figuring out in your banking space, what could you offer and to what part of the entertainment community, and then really drilling down on that. It could be distribution financing, it could be digital portals, or there's probably, and I don't know enough about the banking world to provide enough examples, but what I think is if you think of the areas that are I guess the hottest ones in banking right now, maybe the top 3 priority ones, and then transpose that into the entertainment industry. So if you pick up, I like to look at the business pages. I mean, every morning I read the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Financial Times. Those are my 3. And that really, many times I'll see our clients in there, or I'll see a company that I want to work in there, and I see what their things that they might be innovating on a business standpoint. I'm like, whoa, do they realize the privacy and AI and other things with this? And that allows for that kind of natural, synergy. And like, to sort of Alison's point, and Christian's, using that opportunity to extend your network, maybe write an article, team up with someone in the entertainment industry, write a piece about banking and blank, and then send it out to, I like to write short pieces and send it out as a way to connect with industries that are of interest. But, that's how I started working with Sony and, Discovery Communications, before that Scripps, and Warner Brothers, and then now, like you said, a lot of the tech companies, Microsoft I work with and so forth, have entertainment vehicles. Amazon's a client. So these are all the ways though that you can take the overlay of what you know best and put it in the entertainment industry. Hope that helps.
That's great. Thanks, Dominique. So I know we have a tough out. We've had a lot to cover. I'm going to try to get to one more question, and I'll take one answer on it just because we're running out of time. But could somebody take this one? What's the best way to find an entry-level job? And I know some of you touched on this, but somebody who hasn't already, what's the best way to find an entry-level job?
I'll take a stab just because I do see this every so often, because it's really intimidating, and most, a lot of jobs tend to have that layer of, it feels like that 3 to 4 years of experience is often feels like this barrier for a lot of individuals. I think there are a couple of routes that I would recommend, particularly as it involves sectors I've been involved in. The first is, and it connects back a little bit of like, how do you make that connection, is don't always necessarily look for the, oh, I'm just going to go to a website and apply, but understand the space that you're interested in and use it as a learning vehicle, learning opportunity. So for instance, I'll have someone reach out to me that they're interested in a programming position, but they don't have the experience. And so I will find in my network of contacts, maybe someone who's an engineering manager, say, hey, would you have 30 minutes to talk with this person to educate them on opportunities, which often leads to these 5 or 6 companies have internships every year. Here's how you apply for them. A lot of it is about building that network to find out when there are kind of junior entry-level roles that open up. You get a lot more by building that initial network, or that set of contacts that can kind of point you to where those opportunities, because they do pop up, and they pop up sometimes very regularly, like cyclically. Sometimes when a company has a big need, that they will open up for a lot more opportunities. So I always recommend kind of don't start the process by looking for a formal applying for that first job, but really build networks, find recruiters that you just want to learn from and say, what does it take to get a job, or how do most people get this 3 to 4 years of experience? Those are often the ways that open the pathway to that first opportunity. I mean, you also can, like Gilbert mentioned it, like in his own path, like sometimes you just have to be just humble enough where you're ready to like apply and handle the fact that you might get rejected a lot, but there will always be that one opportunity that will come by, and just have enough perseverance to kind of keep working and networking.
Thank you, Kevin. These are such great answers. I really appreciate everybody's candid insights. And a couple of things I'd like to point out, that we've heard a lot about perseverance that Kevin just brought up. A lot of you have mentioned that. And there's also such a passion for what you all do. And I think that's what is really nice to hear. And I hope that everybody watching and listening is hearing that, and that you bring your passion to getting into this world. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us, and I especially would like to thank our panelists. And you were great. It's really nice, very candid insights into what you do and what advice you have. And I want to wish everybody good luck, and thank you very much.
Bye.